Thank you, YouTube yogis, for being here with me, Megan, and Mr. Sambones. If you haven't met before, he's my wonderful anatomical partner that looks nothing like any of us, truthfully. Yet I use him and I bring him in because I believe in the imagery of anatomy. So this particular video is about your quadratus lumborum muscle. Say that fast a couple times, and then for the rest of the time, we'll just call it the QL. So the QL is really, really important. There's two muscles. I did a nice job of cutting up some towels to show you basically what they look like, but they are part of your support deep core in supporting your pelvis and your lumbar, so your low back. So we would say the lumbopelvic region. So they're really helping to attach your spine to your pelvis, often very problematic and grumpy with low back pain. So if you're here with low back pain, this is a good practice for you because we're not going to look to engage or strengthen them right now. We're going to look to release the quadratus lumborum. So just a little bit more with the anatomy first. I'm going to do the big reveal here and imagine, so it's interesting because they're called quadratus, and the truth is it's more of a triangular shaped muscle. But what we call the origin, or where it first goes in, is on the back of the pelvis. So right here where I'm pointing, this is what was called your iliac crest. So you might reach around there and sometimes it even gets a little sore. So in the inside, so we'd say right in here in the posterior iliac crest, it attaches. You can kind of see on this side. And then it goes all the way up your 5 lumbar vertebrae. So right about here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it's attaching close to the spine. And then it also attaches really to the inside here of your lowest 12th vertebrae. Why that is important is because the quadratus lumborum has a very intimate relationship with respiration. And in yoga therapy and somatics, we believe that our respiratory system is a very powerful healer. And particularly with any muscles like this that actually attach to the muscles of respiration, which is the case because your diaphragm is also there, and the QL helps to stabilize your diaphragm. So just take a moment with me and place your hands on the sides of your rib cage. Take a breath in. And as you're doing that, you're going to breathe into your ribs, breathe out. Think of this area in the back. So I'm going to flip him around for you for a moment. So think of breathing in to the backside, and what happens is these are deep muscles underneath your erector spinae, and they actually sit right on top of your kidneys. So from this backside, you can imagine it's like this, attaching to the back of the pelvis, right? So you might even feel around and feel the top of that pelvic crest. And recognize that as you're breathing, you're actually stimulating these QL muscles. And notice as you're doing that, is there any tightness or discomfort in one side or the other? And if you're not able to breathe into the ribs all the way around, that is telling from the start that there might be some tightness there. Another thing we're going to do just while we're standing before we go down to do the practice is there's a really simple way that sometimes it'll show if we have an imbalance in QL, which often happens. One side's tight, the other side is on vacation all the time. So if you stand straight up, stack your ears over your shoulders and shoulders over your hips. Begin to slowly slide the right hand down towards your outer thigh, towards your knee. So you're taking a lateral or a side bend, not forcing it, but see how far you can go and how close your fingers come to your outer knee. My head's running into Mr. Bones. We're going to have a little hugging close moment here. But just notice how close your fingers come. What do you feel through that left side? So right now you're stretching the left side QL muscle and the right side is compressing. And that's the other thing. Is that compression causing any pain in the right side? And then slowly come up and we'll do the other side. Begin to slide the left hand down your left thigh, just a little at a time. Notice how far you can go without pushing it. And are the compressive forces in the left side right along the spine uncomfortable? And is that right side along the spine, that QL, stretching for you? So now you know one of the things that QL does for us, which is this side bend or lateral bend. But the other reason they're so important is that they are stabilizing postural muscles when we're standing, and particularly they come into action when we're walking because they do what we call a hip hike. So when you go to take a step, so that we don't drag that foot on the ground, we need to lift a hip up. So that's the QL muscle, and you can just do that a couple times. Just go ahead and do like a march in place, just to help to locate. And maybe as you're doing that, even place your hands on the top of that pelvic rim and on the sides of your low back. Is there any pain or discomfort? Get a little balance challenge here too. And we'll come back. So now we're going to do the practice. And for the practice, you will need to have some sort of blanket, or if you happen to have a slo-mo ball because you're a somatic yoga fan, bring that in. And then 2 balls. These are tennis ball size, both, but this one's nice and soft. And I recommend a softer ball if you have it in, I always say dryer wool. Dryer balls work really well because we're going to end with a myofascial release. Last thing I'll mention is that I do have a full 1-hour class on the QL. So this is more of a quick fix relaxation, but feel free to check out that video as well, and I'll put a link up. If you would please come and join me down on your mat. We're going to do 3 simple practices that will help you to locate your QL muscles and release and relax your QL muscles. And hopefully our time with Mr. Bones there will bring you into this idea of the imagery of anatomy to help you to locate. So come down onto your back and relax. We want to start with the knees bent and the feet on the ground, because what we'd like to do is let the rest of the spine release and relax. So shoulder blades, you can roll your shoulders around and place your hands right on the bottoms of the ribs there. Think of that 12th vertebrae at the bottom there, where we saw the attachment point of the QL muscles on the right and the left. Just take a few breaths, slowly deepening the inhalation. You can imagine that you're breathing into your rib cage, or sometimes what I do is put the tips of the index fingers together, elbows on the ground. See if you can slightly get those index fingers apart as you breathe in. And just feel them come back together as you breathe out. And you're letting your pelvis release every time you breathe out. Think of the weight of the pelvis. Notice your lumbar spine, that curve. So you can sense the spaces where the back is resting on the ground, and also where you have that gentle natural curve and your spine might slightly lift off the ground in that low back area. And then we're going to extend just the left leg. Take it out. And we're going to see about stretching the left QL muscle using the leg muscles. So to do that, you want to point the toes up and imagine pushing through the heel and the ball of the foot like you're pushing on a pedal. If you want to do this to your breath, what you can do is take a breath in and push through that foot, and then take a breath out and just release it. So we don't want to pull the hip back up. We're not using the QL to shorten, just to lengthen on the inhale. So the inhalation is the effort. The exhalation, just release. So pushing as you breathe in as far as you can and releasing. I find that my head usually likes to roll side to side. That's a nice indication that your shoulders, your neck, your jaw, everything above is staying relaxed. That's the other thing. This is an important point in our body because we have call our thoracic cavity or our chest cavity. And then we have our abdominal cavity. And this is this dividing line that we're working with in the 12th vertebrae, the diaphragm. So pushing through your foot, you want to feel the muscles hug the bones in the leg and then release those too. So I want you to notice as you're doing this, do you feel a lengthening through your left waist? You can feel it all the way in the outer waist and outer hip, but can you feel that along the left side of the low spine? And sometimes what you might notice is the compression happening in the right side of the low spine. And just check to see that those muscles aren't squeezing. So you're not making this movement by pulling, remember the hip hike idea, that I'm not pulling my right hip up, I'm pushing my left hip down. The other thing that sometimes feels nice is you can add an arm to this. You can reach your left arm as you're reaching through your left foot and release. Let's do a few more with the leg. Last one with the leg. And let go. And now we're going to do the same thing, but I want you to shake out your leg, maybe even dribble your knee like a basketball. So all the leg muscles are on holiday. And locate yourself through that QL on the left side. Picture Mr. Bones and attaching to all 5 of your lumbar vertebrae. And with the leg relaxed, take that hip in that same position towards the foot, but not using the leg, using the muscles in the QL and that left side body. And then release. You can again do it to your breath. Inhale and release. Doing your best to get the QL muscles on the right side to stay quiet. They will compress because you can feel the way you're hiking the right hip up and tilting the left hip down. I'd even place your hands on the front of the hips there. We call those the ASIS points. You can feel those and sense the way that there's this little bit of a diagonal at the top of the inhale, or use the arm. So can you use your QL muscles? So what we're doing now is we're activating them, but we're going long with them. We're activating them and releasing them on that left side. Just letting your head roll. And you really can use your breath here too. If you imagine your left lung even, do more breathing into your left lung. Maybe place your right hand there. Breathing into the left lung, that 12th vertebrae on the left side, the lumbar spine left side. And then take the next one into your full position of stretch or extension. We can pause there if you want a little more stretch. Slide your left leg slightly to the left or to the right, and your left arm slightly to the right. So you're making a little bit more of a side bend as well. If there's any discomfort in your shoulder, bend your elbow. What we want to feel is length through the left side body, and particularly right up against the spine. Think of your low back area, those 5 vertebrae, even your sacrum. Every time you breathe out, so now let's focus on the breath out, releasing, relaxing. Feel the weight of the pelvis, particularly the left hip bone, the left rib cage, release into the earth. So you might start feeling like there's an arch in that left side. You're not going to push the arch out, but as you breathe out, let the arch fall. Let the arch slowly dissipate with the breath out. Take about 5 more rounds of breath. Breathing into the left lung. So just the breathing itself is going to bring freedom into that QL muscle, especially when we've got it in this long position on the left side. And we'll come back, slide your arm down. If your leg was walked over, bring it back to the center. Go ahead and extend your right leg too. And we'll just take a second in what I call the magic moment. So if you shake your legs out, you can take your arms in any position that's comfortable. Just imagine it, a line coming up the center of your body through your spine, dividing right and left. And just notice the left side and the right side, all the way from the toes to the hips, or maybe even through the rib cage. And it might even feel like your pelvis is slightly tilted one way or the other, sensing anything that's changed. Take 2 more rounds of breath. And then we're going to do that same movement with the right side. So you may well know that one side of your QL muscle is tighter. It's usually the side that we have pain if we have low back pain on one side. And you can just do this with that one side, but for the sake of the video, I'm doing both sides. So we start with the knees bent again. Allow the whole length of the spine, the shoulder blades to land, the base of the skull. So everything else goes on holiday first. And this time the left leg will stay bent with the foot on the floor. And you're going to extend the right leg out, point the right toes up towards the sky, begin to engage the muscles or hug the muscles to the bones. You might even feel your right kneecap slide up your thigh. And when you're ready, push through the right leg like you're pushing on a pedal. And notice how the hip will diligently follow along. So you're sensing how the right waist is getting long and the left waist is getting short. And then you're just releasing that. And if you want to do it to your breath, breathe in, push through the foot. That's the effort. Breathe out, release the surrender. So something I really watch for when I do the two sides, and it's because my left side is my grumpy side that's always tight, is to try to keep that side quiet. So this idea of initiating the movement from the right leg, not by pulling up through the left hip. So just ask it. See what happens if you ask the left side to be quiet. Can you feel the difference between the left side compressing versus actively engaging that hip? And you're pushing through the right leg to make this movement. You can add the arm reaching overhead. Think of the space all the way from the right toes to the fingertips, lengthening out, and then releasing. If it's helpful, you can send your breath into your right lung, into your right rib cage. So we have lots of other muscles that play well with the QL. We get into some of our oblique muscles. Intercostal muscles are those muscles between the ribs themselves. Using the leg to create this tilt of the pelvis. Right side getting long and left side shortening. And focus on that right side lengthening. Last one here. And then we'll see if we can do that same movement, but do it from the QL muscle. So the leg is going on holiday. I'm going to relax it. And I think of that area right around the low back, and even my hip is going to get active. So I'm going to push through the hip on breath in and release on breath out. One of the ways I'll know for myself that I'm really more focused now on these lumbopelvic muscles making this movement as opposed to the leg is the toes will turn out to the edge. So the leg is relaxed, and I'm using these muscles in the side body and the back body. You can add the arm in. And that's another thing to watch for is, are you reaching through the arm versus you could even keep the arm relaxed and think of reaching through your armpit. You might feel more of a waist stretch that way. And releasing. Breathe in and lengthen. Breathe out, relax. Right side. Picture that 12th vertebrae, the very bottom vertebrae, where the QL and the diaphragm are kissing each other, your breath in, creating that expansion, but also the connecting point and all 5 of your low back vertebrae, and even on the top of your hip in the right side. Trying to keep that left side quiet. It's just coming along for the ride. And then take that final space. And if you want to keep it right where it is, stay there. You might slide your right leg slightly to the right and right arm to the left. Right arm slightly to the left, creating more of that C curve or the lateral curve. So something you'll notice now that we're doing the second side is if you have a grumpier side, which is always active, and again, that's usually the side where you have tightness or pain in the low back, it may not want to be the short side. So for me, this left side's like, not so much into it. It felt good to stretch it. It doesn't feel so good to compress it. So just note that for yourself. and adjust accordingly. Otherwise, breathing in to the right side. Visualize the space all the way from the toes to the fingers. And in these practices, we can use our physical breath, particularly with this muscle as it attaches to the diaphragm. You can breathe into your right lung right now. But we also use our pranic breath, which is this idea of wherever our thoughts go, the energy flows. So if you're feeling resistance in the top of the right hip, maybe we can't physically breathe there, but picture that space. And focus on the breath out now and this idea of landing. So as you breathe out, let the right waist, the back of the right ribs, even the shoulder blade release into the ground. So if you feel that arch through the right side body, you're letting that arch just fall out with each breath in. Take 3 more rounds of breath. And we'll come out, slide your arm down. Take both legs long again. Just shake them out and take 3 rounds of breath in this magic moment, this point of stillness. Just landing and locating in your body, noticing what you feel. This is a really important part. It's like your brain has to rewire itself. It's remapping itself. Does one leg feel longer, shorter? Does one hip feel higher or lower? You're just noticing. And then we're going to switch and come onto our belly. So feel free to roll to one side slowly. The other movement that perhaps the Quadratus Lumborum is more well known for is that it creates what we call extension of the spine, or what we would say is back bending in yoga. So this is the idea that the Quadratus Lumborum, when both sides contract equally, so what we were doing before is one side is contracting, it will actually shorten the lumbar area. So it's creating that back bend in the lumbar area for us. So the next movement we're going to do is working with both sides equally to release and relax that. This is where if you have a ball, you're going to use the ball. And I generally don't like it full. It'll feel like too much. And if you just ate, you're definitely not going to want it full. But you can also use a blanket. So if you don't have a ball, or a bolster works. I've got all kinds of toys here. And it's just a really nice, easy way to release it. You may find that just one part works best. So if I'm going to use the blanket, I would fold it about like this. And it's going to go right underneath, if you find your navel center, between your navel center and your pubic bone, or think on the back side where your lumbar spine is. So you're going to put it on the front of that area of lumbar spine, or even think of your kidneys in the back. So you got to find where it feels right for you. That's with a blanket. I could do that. And that's a nice force of compression you want to see. So for some people, you want something softer, or I really do like the ball. So I'm going to go with the ball today. The first part is letting your digestive organs settle in here, because they're gonna get a little bit of force put into them. But you can take your arms into whatever position feels best. Extend your legs. You might even rest your forehead on an arm bone. It just depends. And then begin to gently move your hips from side to side. So you're going to sense that the ball or the blanket is right in that soft abdominal area, and it is pressing into the abdominal wall. So you want to check to make sure that that's comfortable for you. You can shake out the legs. And so we know that the QL will shorten the lumbar spine. So what we're looking to do now is lengthen the lumbar spine. One of the easiest ways to do this is to do less. So once again, we can breathe in and notice maybe even the rising in the low back area. Breathe into your kidneys. As you breathe out, let the front of the pelvis, particularly right around at the bottom of the legs, let it just settle into the ground. So imagine your tailbone falling into the ground. Breathing in, you'll feel the resistance of the ball on the belly. And imagine that, and taking that up into those QL muscles, like you're stretching the QL muscles on the breath in. And the breath out is just about releasing and relaxing. Let the weight of the thighs fall. Lengthening the low back. Have you stay here for a few breaths. So for some people, one of the nice ways to release these, and I think it's a pose that is it's a Brussels sprout pose, either people love it or hate it, is like a child's pose position here, which will also stretch those QL muscles. But that's not always accommodating for everybody with their legs. So this is what I do instead, and including me, that I prefer to do this ball and create that same rounding. So we call it a forward fold or flexion of the lumbar area, which is lengthening those QL muscles. But use your breath. Breathe right into the back of that 12th vertebrae. Picture your diaphragm. It might feel different if you can feel the difference between breathing into your rib cage versus breathing into your belly. Belly breath might not feel quite as comfortable anymore. Or just nourishing your kidneys. Remember, your kidneys are right underneath those QL muscles. Take about 3 to 5 more rounds of breath. Continuing to let the tailbone be heavy, the front of the thighs release into the ground every breath out. And scan your body every now and then. Is there any place you're holding tension? Can you release and relax that tension? Let gravity just hold you more and more with each breath out. And then to come out of this one, you can push into your hands. Slowly come up. So that's what we would say would be bilateral. We're working with both sides of the QL muscles, an easy way to relax them. And again, that might be good on its own, but we're going to do one more that will work with one side and then the other. So this is another one where if you know that it's only one side that's aggravated, you could do just the one side. And this is more of a myofascial release. So I'm going to take a blanket. You will need a wall. And I'm going to put the blanket, spread it out because I want to put my pelvis on there and keep those balls close by. So I had showed you these two. I also have a smaller one. You can grab a bunch of different sizes to see what fits you best. But we're going to put our feet up on the wall. I happen to have a window. That's fine too. So that our knees are bent and our hips are bent. So knees and hips in flexion. And the idea is that we want to find about a 90-degree angle so that calf muscles will be more or less parallel to the floor. So you can be a little further from the wall. You're just putting your feet up. And first, just find that space. I've got my feet on the window, which it's a nice view for me. If you like a pillow, you're welcome to put a pillow in there. And just sense that your pelvis is completely supported. It's got a little extra padding underneath it. And as much as you can, let the weight of the thighs just fall into the pelvis. Feel those big, lovely femur bones. And just let them fall into the hips. And your feet will stay on the wall. And we'll start with the left side, unless you just have one side that's aggravated and you want to do that first. And so the idea is sometimes the smaller the ball, the more it gets right in there. It's more like dental floss than a toothbrush, but you just got to play around and see what you need. So we're going to take the ball and we'll roll onto our right hip. We're going to do the left side first. Actually, let's do our right side first. Roll onto your left hip and put the ball. Think of that. Go back to Mr. Bones. Think of the top of your hip bone and then the side of the lumbar spine. And you're going to put the ball right there. So we try to avoid the bones, though we like Mr. Bones, and go right to the top of that hip area, that iliac crest all the way in the back. And just let the ball be there for a moment before you move. If it's too much, you either need to change out the ball or keep a little more weight in the left hip to start. So you can kind of shift your weight over to that left side, but start to play with it. So with the myofascial release, Most people you see will be moving, and I like to do that. I make little circles or slow circles with the hips, really getting in there. And I know this is the right ball for me, but you might still be testing the waters. So you'll know, because if you're gritting your teeth or you're tightening your leg muscles, it's too much. We're not trying to stimulate the nervous system, we're trying to relax it. That's relaxing those QL muscles. But maybe a little bit of movement. If you find a spot that needs a little more TLC, some tender loving care, then just stop and be still. And I just found one of those. Breathe in, breathe into, so we're on the right side, you can breathe into your right lung. And breathe out, let the weight of the thigh bone fall into the hip and the weight of the hip fall into the ball. And so you're really just playing between this moments of stillness, finding those trigger points if you have them, and some gentle, really gentle, slow movement. You can readjust the ball. So we're really focusing most in the lumbar area, but you can come up a little ways. I usually start all the way down by that iliac crest and work my way up the lumbar area. There's another spot. So the idea being, I might start when I find the spot with more weight in my left hip and slowly feel the weight. You can see I'll swing my knees to the right to get a little more weight in the right side, but slowly. And then there can be a slight movement. So the movement might be, remember that it's a hip lifter. So if you lift and drop your hips a little bit, you're going to feel that muscle. And we're trying to massage in and around the muscle, but keeping the muscle as relaxed as possible. So if you get one of those times where it like everything's tightening up, just stop and be still. Maybe even come off the ball. So less is more when we're doing this. Breathing into the right side. And these balls are great too, because they are ways to learn about where these muscles are from the felt sense. You're feeling it now from the sensation of the ball, rolling on it, touching it. Take a few more breaths on the right side. Check to see you're not tightening all the muscles in your legs. One of the tricks too is that if you tighten the muscles in the legs too much, you can put like a block or something between your knees to let the knees fall in together. Sometimes I end up doing that. And we'll switch sides. So just take a little more weight into the left hip, pull that ball out and land. And land for a moment. If you want to take your feet down even, you can do that. Land and be still. Take that magic moment. What presents itself to you in the low back, the right side and the left side, particularly in and around the top of your hip bone in the back, each side of the lumbar spine. And then we'll do the left side. So feet come back up the wall. You can also do this with your calves resting on a chair or on your, well, usually beds are a little high. It just depends on your bed. But you could rest your calves on a chair and do this if that's more comfortable for you. And then we'll switch sides. So you're going to roll onto your right hip. See if you can feel that bony part of your top of your left hip. So that's our PSIS. We've got little dimples down there on the backside. You're looking for that little area of your dimple and trying to avoid the bone itself and be on the tissue where you feel more softness. And maybe just starting by slowly transferring weight into the left hip. You can feel your legs kind of fall to the left to transfer the weight. And I find that if I am still first, it gives my body an opportunity to tune into this space before I start to move, because movement, action is more stimulating in a lot of ways, but I tend to miss all the little intricacies, those little feelings, versus just letting it roll. Let your head and neck stay relaxed, and your jaw, your shoulders. So this is my my super sensitive side, and it gets a little bit sweeter treatment. It's really easy. So when these muscles have been contracted tight for a long time, they're on high alert, and it doesn't take much for them to respond. So remember that. So if you're having a heightened response on one side, that's probably your side that's overworking. Go slower. Be sweeter. And if you want to work your way up a little bit, you can start to come up to just outside the vertebrae and your low back, your lumbar spine. You can even go all the way up to that bottom rib. And being still, or remember this idea of lifting and dropping the hips, just very small, like mini movements, rocking side to side. And I know when I'm being kind to myself, my voice will drop. So I'm not overdoing it. There's no spiked balls in my teaching of myofascial release. It should feel like a really lovely, kind massage. Something you're doing for yourself, and don't you want to remind yourself how kind you can be? Take your last few rolls, just exploring. I could stay on this side for about another 20 minutes, but to keep it equal, roll onto your right hip and take out the ball. And then you can take your feet down. I'm going to finish, for those of you that want to stick with me, just one last moment in, we will go into the child's pose. So if you want a little bit of extra padding, you can put something underneath your knees. If you want to skip child's pose, you can do what we did before with the legs extended. But this time it's about breathing into the kidneys. So I'm going to put that padding underneath me, or some people like it underneath the thighs. And then I have a bolster, but if you have anything like the blanket, ball, something that'll stay there, I put it right across the kidneys. It's just a marker. You could use a towel for that. And feeling the weight of that, I'm going to breathe right into that area. We'll just be here for about 8 to 10 breaths. And sense, as you breathe in, the lengthening from the top of the hips all the way to the beginning of the ribs, particularly right along the edge of the spinal column. Picture the inner edges of those lumbar vertebrae. Deep breath in. Complete breath out, just allowing the weight of the torso to fall onto the thighs. Let the tail fall down. Again, if this doesn't work for you because of the knee position, you can be doing the same thing, laying on your belly with something underneath the belly. And we'll slowly come up. Take your time, or be there longer if you'd rather. Thank you for joining me for this QL release. I needed it. And as I said, if you pick up just maybe one or two of the things that we did, and you may only need to do it on one side, it's just a nice way to greet your low back, and particularly these important muscles, the QL muscles that help to hold our torso onto our pelvis and help us to go forward in our life. Peace. joy, love, and light. Please subscribe. And thank you, Patreons, for all your support.